The days following their arrival in Haven passed in a blur of activity. Kaleb and Averie, along with their fellow Gauntlet survivors, threw themselves into learning everything they could about the true state of the world and the ongoing struggle against the architects. Haven, they discovered, was more than just a refuge. It was the nerve center of a global resistance movement, with tendrils reaching into every controlled environment and free settlement across the planet. The Liberation Front had spent years building a network of informants, saboteurs, and sleeper agents, all working towards the day when they could finally challenge the architects' control. On the morning of their 5th day in Haven, Kaleb and Averie were summoned to the War Room, a high-tech command center buried deep within the mountain. As they entered, they found Janus and the other Liberation Front leaders gathered around a holographic display of the globe. "We've received word from our agents in New Providence," Janus said without preamble. "The architects are moving up their timetable. They're preparing for something big." Sarah, the chief scientist, manipulated the holographic controls, zooming in on New Providence. "Our intelligence suggests they're activating dormant systems throughout the city, systems that have been in place since its founding but never used." Averie leaned in, her keen mind already analyzing the data before her. "These energy signatures, they're similar to what we saw in the Gauntlet, but on a much larger scale." Kaleb nodded, a chill running down his spine as he realized the implications. They're turning the entire city into some kind of testing ground? Or a launch pad? "Precisely," Janus confirmed grimly. "We believe the architects are preparing for what they call the Ascension, a fundamental change to human civilization, possibly in response to whatever they've been communicating with beyond our world." The room fell silent as the weight of this revelation settled over them. It was Mara, her military training evident in her posture, who broke the silence. "So what's our move? We can't just sit back and let this happen." Janus's expression was grave as he replied, "We've been preparing for this moment for years. It's time to launch our counterstrike. We're going to infiltrate New Providence, disable their systems, and expose the truth to the population." As the leaders began to outline their plan, Kaleb and Averie exchanged a glance. They had come so far, learned so much, but the thought of returning to New Providence filled them with a mix of determination and dread. The plan, as it unfolded, was audacious. A team would infiltrate New Providence using the Liberation Front's network of tunnels and hidden passages. Once inside, they would split into 3 groups. One to disable the city's defense systems, one to take control of the communication network, and one to infiltrate the architect's central command. "Kaleb, Averie," Janus said, turning to the siblings, "your knowledge of New Providence and your experiences in the Gauntlet make you uniquely qualified for this mission. We want you to lead the team infiltrating the architect's command center." Kaleb felt a surge of both pride and apprehension. "We're ready," he said, speaking for both of them. "Whatever it takes to stop the architects and free our people." The next few days were a whirlwind of preparation. Kaleb and Averie underwent intensive training, learning to use advanced technology and weapons far beyond anything they had access to in New Providence. They studied detailed maps of the city's hidden infrastructure and memorized codes that would grant them access to restricted areas. Throughout it all, the siblings found strength in each other and in the bonds they had formed with their fellow Gauntlet survivors. Dr. Reeves proved invaluable, her knowledge of the architect's research helping them understand what they might face. Mara's military expertise was crucial in planning their tactical approach. Even Jace, with his street-smart cynicism, contributed insights that could mean the difference between success and failure. On the eve of the mission, Kaleb found Averie on one of Haven's observation decks, staring out at the starry sky. He joined her in silence, both of them lost in thought. "Do you ever wonder," Averie said softly, "what's really out there? What the architects have been talking to?" Kaleb considered the question. "Sometimes, but honestly, I'm more concerned with what's down here. Our people, our world. Whatever's out there, we need to make sure humanity faces it on our own terms, not as puppets of the architects." Averie nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "You always did have a way of cutting to the heart of things." She turned to face him, her expression serious. "Kaleb, whatever happens tomorrow, I want you to know I'm proud of us, of how far we've come, of what we're fighting for." Kaleb pulled her into a hug, his throat tight with emotion. "Me too, Ave. Whatever happens, we face it together. Just like always." As they broke apart, a commotion from below caught their attention. Hurrying down to the main level, they found Janus and the other leaders gathered around a communication terminal, their faces grim. "What's happened?" Kaleb asked, dread settling in his stomach. Janus looked up, his eyes hard. "We've been compromised. One of our agents in New Providence was captured. They're accelerating their plans. The ascension is beginning now." The room erupted into activity, plans being rapidly adjusted, orders shouted across communication channels. In the midst of the chaos, Kaleb and Averie stood firm, their resolve strengthening. "We move now," Janus declared, his voice cutting through the din. "The strike teams will depart in 30 minutes. This is not a drill, people. The fate of humanity hangs in the balance." As they rushed to make final preparations, Kaleb and Averie found themselves at the center of a storm of activity. Equipment was checked and double-checked, last-minute intelligence updates were disseminated, and final goodbyes were said. Before they knew it, they were boarding one of Haven's stealth aircraft, the Providence just beginning to lighten on the horizon. As the craft lifted off, carrying them towards New Providence and the culmination of their journey, Kaleb and Averie sat side by side, drawing strength from each other's presence. The flight was tense, everyone acutely aware of the stakes. As they approached New Providence, the true scale of what they were facing became apparent. The city was alight with energy, massive structures that had lain dormant for generations now pulsing with power. "Look!" Averie gasped, pointing to the center of the city. A huge tower, previously hidden or disguised, now rose above the skyline, its peak disappearing into the clouds. "The Architect's command center," Mara confirmed, her voice tight. "Our primary target." As they neared the city's outskirts, alarms suddenly blared throughout the aircraft. "We've been detected," the pilot shouted. "Brace for evasive maneuvers." What followed was a harrowing series of twists and dives as the pilot attempted to evade New Providence's defense systems. Energy beams sliced through the air around them, each near miss a reminder of how close they were to failure. "We're not going to make it to the drop point," the pilot called out. "I'll get you as close as I can, but you'll have to go the rest of the way on foot." Kaleb met Averie's eyes, seeing his own determination reflected there. "We've come too far to turn back now," he said. "Whatever it takes, we finish this." The aircraft swooped low over the outermost sector of New Providence, its rear hatch opening to reveal the familiar yet alien landscape of their former home. Without hesitation, Kaleb and Averie leapt out, their advanced gear allowing them to land safely on a rooftop below. As the aircraft peeled away, already under heavy fire, the siblings took a moment to orient themselves. The city they had grown up in was transformed, its streets empty of civilians but crawling with security forces and strange robotic sentries. "We need to move," Averie said, her eyes scanning for a path forward. "The others will be launching their attack soon. We have to reach the command center before the architects can complete whatever they're planning." Kaleb nodded, checking his gear one last time. "Together?" he asked, holding out his hand. Averie grasped it firmly. "Together," she confirmed. With that, they set off across the rooftops of New Providence, their hearts pounding with the knowledge that the final battle for humanity's future had begun. The gauntlet had prepared them for this moment, honing their skills and testing their resolve. Now it was time to put everything they had learned to the ultimate test. As they moved deeper into the city, explosions began to rock the ground, signaling the start of the Liberation Front's coordinated attack. Kaleb and Averie pressed on, their focus unwavering. They had a mission to complete, a truth to uncover, and a future to fight for. The accidental survivors from Sector 7 had become the tip of the spear in humanity's fight for self-determination. Whatever lay ahead in the Architect's Tower, whatever revelations or challenges awaited them, Kaleb and Averie were ready to face it. The final act of their incredible journey was about to unfold, and the fate of not just New Providence but all of humanity hung in the balance. As Kaleb and Averie made their way through the transformed landscape of New Providence, the city they once called home felt like an alien battleground. The familiar streets and buildings were now overshadowed by newly activated structures pulsing with unknown energy, and the air crackled with tension and the distant sounds of conflict. Their progress was swift but cautious, years of navigating Sector 7's treacherous alleys serving them well as they avoided patrols and slipped through blind spots in the city's surveillance network. As they neared the central sectors, however, the challenge intensified. "Look," Averie whispered, pointing to a group of civilians being herded into a building by robotic sentries. "They're rounding up the population. But why?" Kaleb's expression darkened. "Whatever the architects are planning, they don't want witnesses, or they need them contained for some reason." They were about to move on when Averie suddenly grabbed Kaleb's arm, her eyes wide. "Wait, that woman there. I recognize her from the Gauntlet files. She's one of the head researchers." Kaleb followed her gaze to see a stern-faced woman directing the robotic sentries. Unlike the confused and frightened civilians, she moved with purpose and authority. "We need to know what she knows," Kaleb said, his mind racing with possibilities. "If we can capture her, we might get crucial information about the architect's plans." Averie nodded, already formulating a strategy. "I have an idea, but it's risky. We'll need to use the city's own systems against them." What followed was a daring plan that showcased the siblings' unique blend of skills. Averie hacked into a nearby terminal, using the knowledge she'd gained in Haven to bypass New Providence's security protocols. Meanwhile, Kaleb prepared a distraction, rigging some scavenged equipment into a makeshift sonic disruptor. When everything was in place, they sprung their trap. The sonic disruptor sent the robotic sentries into disarray, their sensors overloaded by the high-frequency pulse. In the ensuing chaos, Kaleb and Averie moved swiftly, incapacitating the researcher and pulling her into a nearby alley before the security forces could regroup. The woman, once she recovered from the shock of her capture, glared at them with a mixture of fear and defiance. "You have no idea what you're interfering with," she spat. "The Ascension is humanity's only hope for survival." Averie, her voice calm but intense, leaned in close. "Then explain it to us. What exactly is the Ascension? What are the architects really planning?" Whether it was the genuine curiosity in Averie's tone or the realization that she had no other choice, the researcher's resolve seemed to waver. Over the next few minutes, she revealed a truth more staggering than anything Kaleb and Averie had imagined. The Ascension, she explained, was not just a plan for humanity's future. It was a response to an imminent threat. The architects' communications with entities beyond Earth had revealed a cosmic cycle of destruction and rebirth, one that had claimed countless civilizations across the galaxy. Earth's time was running out. The Gauntlet, the controlled environments, all of it was preparation, the researcher said, her voice trembling. We needed to push human evolution, to create individuals capable of interfacing with technology beyond our current understanding. The Ascension is our upload, our escape from the physical limitations that make us vulnerable. Kaleb and Averie exchanged shocked glances as the implications sank in. The architects weren't just planning to change humanity, they were planning to transform it entirely, to shed physical form and become something else. Before they could press for more details, the sound of approaching security forces forced them to move. They bound and gagged the researcher, leaving her hidden but safe, and continued their journey towards the central tower with renewed urgency. As they navigated the increasingly perilous streets, Kaleb and Averie debated the revelations they'd just heard. The threat to Earth's existence added a new layer of complexity to their mission. Could they justify stopping the Ascension if it truly was humanity's only hope for survival? But could they trust the architect's judgment, knowing the extreme measures they'd already taken? Their dilemma was interrupted by a sudden explosion that rocked the ground beneath their feet. Looking up, they saw a Liberation Front aircraft engaged in a dogfight with New Providence's aerial defenses. The battle for the city's future was escalating rapidly. Pressing on, they finally reached the base of the central tower. Its massive structure seemed to defy physics, stretching impossibly high into the sky. As they searched for a way in, Averie's comm device suddenly crackled to life. "Kaleb, Averie, do you read me?" It was Mara's voice, tense but clear. "We've secured the communication hub, but we're encountering heavy resistance. Whatever the architects are doing, it's happening soon. You need to get to the top of that tower." Acknowledging the message, the siblings redoubled their efforts to find an entrance. It was Kaleb who spotted it, a maintenance hatch, well concealed but visible to his trained eye. As Averie worked to bypass its security, Kaleb kept watch, acutely aware of how exposed they were. Just as the hatch slid open, a shout from behind made them whirl around. A group of security officers had spotted them, weapons raised. "Intruders at the central tower. All units converge on our location." Kaleb and Averie didn't hesitate. They dove through the hatch, sealing it behind them just as energy blasts scorched the spot where they had been standing. They found themselves in a dimly lit service tunnel, the walls humming with the power flowing through the tower. "No turning back now?" Kaleb said, his voice tight with tension. Averie nodded, her expression determined. "We finish this, whatever it takes." As they began their ascent through the heart of the architect's stronghold, both siblings knew that they were racing not just against time, but against the very fate of humanity. The final confrontation awaited them at the top of this impossible tower, and the choices they would make there would shape the future of their species for generations to come. The accidental survivors from Sector 7 had come so far, overcome so much. Now, they faced their greatest challenge yet, the fate of two worlds, the physical Earth they had always known, and the digital realm the architects envisioned, hung in the balance. And Kaleb and Averie were the linchpin upon which everything would turn. The ascent through the central tower was a grueling test of everything Kaleb and Averie had learned, both in the harsh environment of Sector 7 and through their ordeals in the Gauntlet. The tower's internal structure was a maze of security checkpoints, energy fields, and gravity-defying architecture, clearly designed to disorient and challenge intruders. But the siblings were no ordinary intruders. Their unique blend of street smarts, analytical thinking, and the advanced training they'd received in Haven allowed them to overcome each obstacle. Averie's technical skills proved invaluable, allowing them to bypass security systems and manipulate the tower's own technology to their advantage. Kaleb's physical prowess and quick thinking saw them through the more direct challenges, whether it was scaling a seemingly unclimbable shaft or outmaneuvering robotic sentries. As they climbed higher, the nature of the tower began to change. The lower levels had been largely mechanical, filled with humming machinery and power conduits. But as they approached the upper reaches, the environment became increasingly surreal. Holographic displays flickered on every surface, showing streams of data and images of distant stars. The very air seemed charged with potential, as if reality itself was becoming malleable. "Kaleb, look at this," Averie said, her voice filled with awe as she examined a terminal they'd come across. "These readings, it's like the tower is generating some kind of field that's altering the fundamental properties of space-time." Kaleb, keeping watch for any signs of pursuit, glanced at the display. The complexity of it was beyond him, but he trusted Averie's assessment. "Can you tell what it's for?" Averie's brow furrowed in concentration. I think it's preparation for the ascension. They're creating a space where the laws of physics as we know them don't fully apply. A midpoint between our physical reality and whatever comes next." The implications were staggering, but they had no time to dwell on them. The sounds of battle from outside were growing louder, a reminder that their allies in the Liberation Front were fighting and dying to give them this chance. As they neared the top of the tower, they encountered fewer automated defenses but more human resistance. It seemed the most loyal followers of the architects were gathered here, making a last stand to protect their vision of humanity's future. In a particularly fierce skirmish, Kaleb and Averie found themselves pinned down behind a barrier of shifting energy, enemy fire keeping them from advancing. It was in this moment of crisis that they saw the true strength of their bond. Without a word spoken, they formulated a plan through mere glances and subtle gestures. Kaleb provided cover fire, using the advanced weapon he'd been given in Haven with a skill that surprised even him. Meanwhile, Averie worked feverishly to hack into the tower's systems, her fingers flying over her portable interface. Suddenly, the energy barrier they were hiding behind expanded, surging forward to engulf their attackers. In the confusion that followed, Kaleb and Averie pressed their advantage, quickly neutralizing the remaining resistance. "Nice work," Kaleb said, grinning at his sister despite the gravity of their situation. Averie returned the smile, a glimmer of their old sibling dynamic shining through the tension. "I do what I can. Now, come on. We're almost there." The final stretch to the top of the tower was eerily quiet. As they emerged onto a vast open floor dominated by a central column of swirling energy, they realized why. They were expected. Standing before the column, surrounded by holographic displays and flanked by what appeared to be half-human, half-machine guards, was a figure Kaleb and Averie recognized from historical records and propaganda broadcasts. It was the Prime Architect, the legendary visionary who had guided the creation of New Providence and the other controlled environments. "Welcome, children of Sector 7, the Prime Architect said, his voice surprisingly warm. "You've come so far. Farther than we ever anticipated when we designed the gauntlet. But then, adaptation and exceeding expectations is precisely what we hope to cultivate in humanity." Kaleb and Averie stood side by side, weapons raised but not firing. There was something about the Prime Architect's demeanor that gave them pause. "Why?" Averie asked, her voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through her. "Why all of this? The controlled environments, the gauntlet, the lies?" The Prime Architect's expression turned somber. "Because the alternative was extinction. You've seen glimpses of the truth, I'm sure. The cosmic cycle that threatens not just our world but countless others across the galaxy. We did what we had to do to ensure humanity's survival." "By taking away our freedom?" Kaleb countered. "By deciding the fate of millions without their knowledge or consent?" "Freedom is a luxury we could not afford," the Prime Architect replied. "Not when the survival of our species was at stake. The ascension is our only hope, our chance to transcend the physical limitations that make us vulnerable to the coming storm." As the Prime Architect spoke, the column of energy behind him pulsed and grew. Averie's eyes widened as she realized what she was seeing. "It's a gateway," she breathed. "A bridge between realities." The Prime Architect nodded, a hint of pride in his eyes. "Precisely. A doorway to a new phase of human existence, one where we are no longer bound by flesh and bone, where our consciousness can survive the destruction of our physical world." "And what about those who don't want to leave their physical forms behind?" Kaleb demanded. "What about the millions in New Providence and the other enclaves who never had a say in this?" "That," said a new voice, "is why we're here." Kaleb and Averie turned to see Janus and a team from the Liberation Front emerging from a hidden entrance. They must have fought their way up through the tower using a different route. The next few moments were a blur of action. The Prime Architect's guards moved to attack, but Kaleb, Averie, and the Liberation Front team were ready. A fierce but brief battle ensued, ending with the guards neutralized and the Prime Architect surrounded. "It's over," Janus said, his voice firm. "Your grand plan ends here." But the Prime Architect merely smiled, a sad, knowing expression. "You still don't understand. It's already begun. The ascension cannot be stopped. Even now, millions of minds are being prepared for the transition. In moments, humanity will take its next great leap forward." Averie, who had been examining the holographic displays during the confrontation, suddenly gasped. "He's right. The process, it's affecting everyone in New Providence, in all the controlled environments. If we shut it down now, millions could die or worse," the Prime Architect finished. "Their minds caught between realities. Is that a price you're willing to pay?" The room fell silent as the weight of the decision before them sank in. Kaleb looked at Averie, seeing his own turmoil reflected in her eyes. They had come to stop the architects, to free humanity from their control. But could they justify potentially condemning millions to a fate worse than death? It was Averie who broke the silence, her voice quiet but determined. "There's another way. We can't stop the ascension, but we can change it. Give people a choice." All eyes turned to her as she moved to the central console, her fingers flying over the controls. "I can modify the program. Instead of forcing the transition, we can make it an offer. Let each person decide for themselves if they want to ascend or remain in the physical world." The Prime Architect's eyes widened. That could work, but it would mean abandoning our carefully laid plans. leaving humanity's future to chance. To choice, Kaleb corrected. Isn't that what being human is all about? The freedom to choose our own path, even if it's not the one you think is best? For a long moment, the Prime Architect was silent, centuries of carefully laid plans warring with the truth before him. Finally, he nodded. Do it, he said to Averie. Give them the choice. What followed was a tense few minutes as Averie worked to modify the Ascension protocol, her mind working at lightning speed to rewrite code that had been centuries in the making. Kaleb stood by her side, offering support and keeping a watchful eye on the Prime Architect and his own allies, acutely aware that everything could still go wrong. Finally, Averie looked up, her face etched with exhaustion but her eyes bright with accomplishment. It's done, she said. The choice is theirs now. The Prime Architect moved to a communication terminal, his fingers dancing over the controls. Then it's time they knew the truth. All of it. Suddenly, every screen in New Providence, every holographic display, every communication device erupted with a broadcast. The Prime Architect, with Kaleb and Averie by his side, began to speak. He told the truth about the architects, about the controlled environments, about the cosmic threat facing humanity. He explained the Ascension, what it meant, and the choice that now lay before every individual. As the broadcast continued, Kaleb and Averie added their own voices, sharing their journey from Sector 7 to this moment. They spoke of the importance of freedom, of self-determination, of facing the future united but not uniform. The choice is yours, Kaleb said, his voice carried to every corner of New Providence and beyond. To ascend to a new form of existence, or to remain and face whatever comes next in the physical world. But whatever you choose, know that you do so as free individuals, not as pawns in someone else's game. As the broadcast ended, a profound silence fell over the tower. Then, gradually, they began to see the results of their actions. On screens throughout the room, they watched as some individuals chose to ascend, their physical forms dissolving into streams of energy that flowed into the gateway. Others chose to remain, embracing their loved ones and facing the uncertain future with determination. Kaleb and Averie stood hand in hand, watching as the world they had known transformed before their eyes. They had done it. They had given humanity the truth, and with it, the power to shape its own destiny. As the sun began to rise over New Providence, casting its light on a city forever changed, Kaleb turned to Averie. What now? He asked, the weight of their journey finally settling on him. Averie squeezed his hand, a small smile playing on her lips. Now we help build the world we've been fighting for. Whatever comes next, we face it together, just like always. The accidental survivors from Sector 7 had become the architects of humanity's new future. The game had changed for the final time, evolving into something beyond even the architect's grand design. As Kaleb and Averie looked out over the transformed landscape of New Providence, they knew that their journey was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. The immediate aftermath of the broadcast and the modified Ascension was chaos, but it was a chaos born of freedom and choice rather than control and coercion. People from all sectors of New Providence and beyond were grappling with the truth that had been revealed to them and the monumental decision they now faced. Kaleb and Averie found themselves at the center of it all, working tirelessly to help manage the transition. Their unique perspective as former residents of Sector 7 who had experienced the gauntlet and uncovered the truth made them invaluable in bridging the gap between the old world and the new. In the days that followed, they witnessed both heart-wrenching farewells as families were divided by their choices, and joyous reunions as the barriers between sectors finally crumbled. The social structure of New Providence was transforming rapidly, with people from all backgrounds coming together to face the challenges ahead. 1 week after the broadcast, Kaleb and Averie stood before a newly formed council, comprising representatives from all sectors of New Providence, members of the Liberation Front, and even some of the architects who had chosen to remain in physical form to help guide the transition. We need to establish contact with the other enclaves, Averie was saying, her voice firm as she addressed the council. New Providence wasn't the only controlled environment. There are others out there who need to know the truth, who deserve the same choice we've been given." Kaleb nodded in agreement. "And we need to prepare for what comes next. The cosmic threat the architects warned about, it's still out there. Those of us who chose to remain in physical form need to be ready to face it." The council debated long into the night, grappling with the enormity of the task before them. By the time the sun rose the next morning, a plan had begun to take shape. Expeditions would be sent out to make contact with other enclaves and free settlements. Research teams would be formed to study the architects' data on the cosmic threat and develop strategies for survival. And a new educational system would be implemented to help people understand and adapt to the radically changed world they now inhabited. Through it all, Kaleb and Averie remained at the forefront, their bond stronger than ever as they worked to shape the future they had fought so hard to make possible. Months passed, and gradually a new society began to emerge. It was a hybrid civilization, with those who had chosen to ascend maintaining contact through advanced interfaces, sharing their expanded knowledge and capabilities with those who remained in physical form. The barrier between the digital and physical realms became increasingly blurred as new technologies were developed to bridge the gap. New Providence, once a rigidly controlled city-state, became a hub of innovation and cooperation. The formerly stark divisions between sectors gave way to a fluid, dynamic community where ideas and resources flowed freely. The gauntlet, that crucible of suffering that had shaped Kaleb and Averie's journey, was transformed into a historical site and educational center, a reminder of the past and a beacon for the future. As the first year of this new era drew to a close, Kaleb and Averie found themselves once again standing atop the central tower, looking out over the city that had changed so much, yet remained their home. "Did you ever imagine we'd end up here?" Averie asked, a hint of wonder in her voice. "When we were just two kids trying to survive in Sector 7? Kaleb chuckled, shaking his head. "Never in my wildest dreams. But then again, I never imagined a lot of things. Aliens, digital ascension, cosmic threats. Our world turned out to be a lot bigger and stranger than we ever knew." Averie nodded, her expression turning serious. "And there's still so much we don't know. The expeditions to other enclaves are just beginning to report back. The cosmic threat is still out there, getting closer every day. We have so much work ahead of us." "True," Kaleb agreed. "But look at how far we've come. Look at what we've accomplished together. Whatever challenges lie ahead, I believe we can face them. Not just you and me, but all of humanity, united and free." As they stood there, the setting sun painting the sky in hues of orange and purple, a notification chimed on both their communication devices. It was a message from the council. Another expedition had made contact with a previously unknown enclave. A new chapter in their journey was about to begin. Kaleb and Averie exchanged a look, one that contained a lifetime of shared experiences and unspoken understanding. Without a word, they turned and headed back into the tower, ready to face whatever new adventures awaited them. The game had evolved beyond recognition, but they had evolved with it. From accidental survivors to revolutionary leaders to architects of a new age, Kaleb and Averie had come further than they ever thought possible. And yet in many ways their greatest challenges and their greatest triumphs still lay ahead. As they stepped into the council chamber, ready to help shape the next phase of humanity's journey, both siblings knew one thing for certain. Whatever the future held, they would face it as they always had. Together, with courage, intelligence, and an unbreakable bond that had seen them through every trial and triumph. The accidental survivors had become the intentional shapers of humanity's destiny, and their story was far from over.